We go ahead and get going. And this session is recorded, so for those of you who's got to drop off or come and go based on different meetings, we will make sure this gets shared, and we'll post this in the Customer Academy so everyone can access it. So depending on where you're logging in the world, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We've got a great session for you all today. This is our customer quarterly series webinars that we've launched, this being the first of that quarterly cadence. Today's topic, AI and wireless. Overhyped or the new reality? We've got Ted Schneider, our CEO, Doug Mansell, our Senior Director of Technical Operations, and myself, Don Cook. We've got a great agenda for today. We're going to touch on a lot of different topics regarding AI, building agentic networks, how that works, dispel some myths along the way, seamless integration with AI ops for those of you who have AI initiatives that are more in line with more global enterprise type initiatives in your organization. We'll talk about supporting those as well. We're going to talk about our Seven Signal Experience Score, which has gotten rave reviews as we show that product, which we just got back from Cisco Live a couple weeks ago, showing off that product to great reviews. It's been a lot of fun showing that as we go, and we're going to talk a little bit about AI trends as well. So got some Gartner statistics along the way. So before I throw it over to Doug, I'm going to launch our first poll to kind of get an understanding of where our audience is with AI. So if you don't mind um, clicking through this and helping us understand where we are, how do you rate your organization's AI maturity? So we're experimenting with pilots. We've deployed some AI solutions. AI is the core of our strategy. And of course, what's AI again? So hopefully, no one will answer that last one after today's webinar. But if you do need to check that one, we totally get it. All right, it looks like things have stopped moving around. So it looks like the majority of folks have deployed some AI, which is not what I was expecting. So, which is pretty cool. So 55% of our audience has deployed some sort of AI, Doug. So that should give you some pretty good context of our audience today. So,
Great.
with that being said, why don't I throw it over to you and let's go ahead and get started.
All right. Yeah, we can jump in. Let me find the share button. Oh yeah, you gotta press it twice in Zoom here. All right. So I want to jump in initially with experience score. So high level experience score. Right now, we capture data from agents and from sensors. This is all endpoint data. This is the data that comes from there is what we like to call the truth layer. It's the network starts at the client. So if you don't have that data that's coming from the client, you're not seeing the full perspective of how things are going inside of your network. Because the end user experience is really the key piece. If your end users are having a bad experience, but your network infrastructure is saying everything's fine, I would say that your network is actually not doing that well. You need to make sure that your end users are having a good experience to, say that your network is running well. So right now, like I said, we capture this information, agents, sensors, we have a lot of information, but you really have to dig through it right now inside of Seven Signal to find the data and then turn that data into, a story around why a device is having a bad experience, to troubleshoot it. What we're doing with experience score is elevating from that data a grade score for a device or for an access point or a network, all the way up to your total organization experience from the agent and sensor data. So that's going to look like this A, B, C, D, and F score. And that's coming in kind of three different forms of experience, depending on the source. You've got your real experience, you've got your expected, you've got your inferred. The real comes from the agents, expected from sensors sitting in space, running their tests 24/7. So that can help you understand if there's going to be a problem in a space as somebody comes back in. You've done like a hardware overhaul overnight. You can make sure that you're testing those things right away before people come back in. And inferred is all of the clients that are connected to your network, whether they have an agent on them, whether they're bring your own device, like somebody's cell phone connected to your network, we're going to be using the sensors to look at those clients, the data passing from the client to their access point, and inferring what their experience is like. And all of that will roll up into this real, expected, and inferred experience. And that's kind of the foundation of what our platform is going toward. This is going to help you understand where problems are, will also help our AI know where problems are and start troubleshooting those issues ahead of time for you.
Hey Doug, the inferred area there, that's relatively new, maybe
Mm.
to us or maybe even the audience. Is that like what used to be called predictive or crowdsourcing, or what would you say that's equivalent of? It's not necessarily AI, is it? It's
No, no, it's not AI. It's the so basically what we're doing with the sensors is we're going to be capturing effectively a packet capture over a short amount of time, and then using the information that we see in there, frame data and all that. And we know which frames and which packets are coming from which devices. So we can see what their MCS is like, and we can see, where that packet is going. So we see a lot of data inside of that, and we're going to use that to infer what that device's experience is like on top of using the sensor querying that access point. And so it's going to kind of be a combination of that information we're capturing from that packet capture and then the sensor querying the access point. It's going to be a combination of that information and but specific to individual clients. So you'll be able to see those individual clients in our platform. So you would be able to see like an iOS device in our platform, what its experience is like over time using that information that comes from the sensor.
okay. So you're essentially getting the client experience without having to put any software on the client itself.
Right, right,
Okay,
right.
great. Thanks.
So, like I said, this is foundational. The experience score is built on that data that comes from the sensors and agents, and then we've got the synthetic metrics. So that's we're going up one layer from that measurement data. So synthetic metrics are things like Wi-Fi quality, application connectivity, network connectivity. These are things that are underneath these five key metrics of connectivity, roaming, coverage, congestion, and interference. So inside of interference, we've got adjacent channel interference, co-channel interference, RF problem. Those are the synthetic metrics inside of key metric. And then the key metrics, and then those all roll up into this experience score, which then rolls into this overall experience score for whatever you're looking at. So that's, like I said before, it's a device, it's an access point, it's your entire organization getting an overall score. So that helps you report upwards too. So, if you've got a C-level person who wants to see how things are going, you'll be able to use our dashboards to say, yeah, I've got an A overall. I know I've got a few devices that need attention. We've got these incidents that are kind of active. We're working on those. And that way you can report upwards very easily with this. And then on top of that, we will have Iris built on top of this foundation. So inside of Iris, we've got what? MCP. This is Model Context Protocol. And I will show what that is in a few minutes. We've got AI agents. So any instance of a generative AI that is being asked to do a specific thing is an agent. So if you're talking about ChatGPT, for example, all of the different chats that you have with ChatGPT are each individually an agent, even though it is all ChatGPT. The idea of an agent is it's that model doing a specific thing that you've asked it to do. And then we'll also have traditional machine learning, trend analysis, traditional machine learning models to help support all the things that we want to do next year. So what does this look like as like an integration process? Actually, what I'd like to show right now, I'm going to jump away from this for a minute, is I'm going to show Model Context Protocol. So Model Context Protocol is put out by Anthropic. This is the company that created Claude. And effectively what it is a wrapper around an API. So we've built this. It's running locally on my laptop. We've built this. So this is Claude Desktop, where it has access to these endpoints in our API. It's not all of them, but this is just a demo example of what this will be in the end. So I've got all of these endpoints. So what I can do is I can ask it to find my phone in 7-Signal in the global core org. Now this is a demo, so this is a live demo. So if it doesn't work, I'll manipulate it a little bit. So here, good, it realized that I had this tool available. So now you can see that it's found my phone, which is, yes, it's a Pixel 9 Pro Fold. That's correct. Licensed, yes. So it is getting information. So what I can do from here is inside of the platform, if we look at my phone, so here's my phone. Oh, it was my phone. Let's find it. So here you can see I'm having interference issues right here. This is 9 p.m. around that time. You can see my phone kind of jumped up onto a 2.4 gigahertz band, and it was interfering with the other pieces that I have there. So what I can do is I can have it inside of Iris or inside of the platform. I've got Iris here, and I can have Iris. I can come in here and I can click this button and have it run an interference analysis, tell me why there's a problem. It'll give me information as to why there's a problem, what's causing the problem, and then some steps as to how to resolve that issue. So we've built this out for roaming coverage congestion interference. It takes a moment, then you get that information back. You can see adjacent channel interference on 2.4, and then it gives some device recommendations of, automatic band steering, update Wi-Fi drivers, and then on the network side, adjusting channel allocation, implementing dynamic frequency selection. So there's some recommendations in here as to, how to resolve this. So you can come in here, you can click this for individual devices having issues. But this information would be more useful in a place like ServiceNow. And inside of ServiceNow, they're pushing a big thing called agentic workflows. This was the big topic at Cisco Live, agentic this, agentic that. But I think there's a disconnect, really, Don and Ted. There's a disconnect between what agentic workflows means and how to actually apply that in the real world. And MCP kind of closes that gap. So what I can do here, I've had this find my device, and what I can do is I can ask it to run an interference issue for my device. So what it's doing is it's doing the same thing, effectively going into the platform, pressing that button. It's doing it through the API. So now it's triggered it, and now it's going to go fetch the response. And here is the response. So here's one major problem found, 2.4 gigahertz band. And essentially it's the same thing, right? Because it is pulling that iris information out. So it's got this information in here talking about recommended fixes, what's happening, what's the primary issue. But again, this is an agent outside of 7Signal now, getting this information, putting it into this chat window. But we take this one step further.
Before you leave there, Doug, let's
Yeah.
stay on that Claude for a minute. So if I created a vision from two different perspectives, one would be still holding my CTO title. If I want to use Perplexity or some other AI front end in 7Signal as a corporation, I wouldn't have to go much farther if I wanted some basic information about what's going on in the data set that we've collected. Or let's say I'm a help desk person in ServiceNow. I could have my AI bot, whatever tool I use, do the same MC. So the MCP is really the connector
Yes.
to our data. Is that what that is another way of saying that?
Yeah, it's telling these agents because Claude has no idea on its own about what 7Signal is, but it helps it understand what API endpoints are available and how to pull that information. And then what it does with that information is kind of up to that agent.
How new is MCP? Is it going to stick around with some of the front ends that are out there on AI?
Yeah, so MCP was released 6, 8 months ago, something like that, and then since then it's kind of blown up massively in proportion to what they were expecting. It is mentioned by pretty much every large organization out there. ChatGPT is getting MCP integrations. Claude has it now, obviously. Notabot has it. And then ServiceNow, I believe, is starting to build out integrations so that their agents can use MCP servers. So there's kind of two different things for MCP as well. There's the MCP that's running on my laptop right now, but then there's what's also called a remote MCP. A remote MCP is something like this. So here you can see I've got Jira in here. And this is actually a remote MCP. So this is connecting through the internet to an MCP server and querying the API through that, not something that's local on my device. So
Okay,
what
so as a system administrator that I am for some of our systems here, I don't have to give access to other systems. I could just have this be the front end for a lot of folks in the organization. Or as a CTO, I can walk into the door and I could ask, Alexa or somebody with MC, some connectivity to it. How's the Wi-Fi on Doug's phone? Because Doug just called me on the way in and complained that Wi-Fi is down, and it's not. It's Doug that's down. So
yeah.
we can work
Yeah.
on that. Yeah. I'm
Yeah, that's
curious. I'm curious in the audience if anybody wants to throw something in the chat. But if anybody's used any of this MCP, or if they've standardized on a front end for AI in an organization and they plan to use this as that connectivity path to all the data that's out there.
yeah, I spoke to a customer last week, I believe. It was either last week or Monday. Time kind of flies together, you know. But they were saying they have a private instance of ChatGPT internally that, you know, for maintaining all of their data internally. But this is something that could easily tie into that as well. So you know, a help desk having access to this kind of thing. You know, if you've got that internal ChatGPT hooked up to this help desk, you know, gets a ticket and says, "Hey, you know, I have this issue with this device," they could ask ChatGPT to pull this information and start understanding what it is.
Yeah.
But then you can go a step further, you know, and we were talking about ServiceNow. If we have ServiceNow, they're talking about all this agentic workflow. So this doesn't just have to be ServiceNow. Let's say you have an IT ticketing system, but it has agentic workflows in it. A ticket gets created from somebody, you know, from their device saying, you know, the Wi-Fi sucks. That ticket gets created, and now an agent, an AI agent takes it. A human hasn't seen it yet. An AI agent takes it, goes, all right, I know which device this is. It does the same exact thing that I just did inside of Claude. Can you find this device? Okay, now let me run some data analysis on it. And that's all just pinging our MCP right here. You know, it's running an analysis, it's getting data around it and tying it into that ticket before a human has even seen it. So there's a lot of pre-work that can be done using MCP and these AI agents so that when a human does eventually see this ticket, there's been a huge reduction in that mean time to knowledge, a mean time to understanding why there's an issue, mean time to understanding what the issue is, and they can get on to resolving the issue. So
Is
again,
there a
yeah.
projected path, Doug? If so, you know, based on this audience and you know, maybe they're a little earlier in launching AI and you know, maybe they've got an AI-based solution like a Seven Signal, but for a different platform, and they're just scratching the surface. You know, what's the logical path for them and conversations internally to get to something like this?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I mean, there's a lot of organizations out there right now that I know are hiring, I think, for like VPs of AI, but it's not about knowing how AI functions. It's more like the digital transformation portion of it, right? There's, you know, how do you implement AI in a way that's going to be effective for like the organization? And there's a lot, there's, I mean, we could probably have a
Yeah.
whole webinar on,
W-
you know, how to choose which AI agents you're going to use, what platforms.
Right.
But the most basic portion of this is going to be this MCP, you know, there's a lot of organizations out there that are creating this remote MCP to be able to pull that information into an agent. So even if you just had that private chat GPT, if you have those outside connectors, you can start pulling that information from outside sources and start having it be at least moderately effective of being able to just get that information into the hands of people who need it.
Yeah.
And then you can go beyond that of, you know, how are we going to make this into a workflow? Because there's a concept that's being elevated now. It's called, I have it here on the slide. It's called ambient AI agents, and these are agents that run in the background. They don't they don't interface with humans at all. They just a trigger happens and they start running things, you know, like pulling information into a ticket. Or for our platform, our ambient agents, as we put them out next year, are going to be doing lightweight analysis of a device, saying, "Oh, I see there's a roaming issue. Let me do some analysis on that." And it's like a lightweight, high level analysis. But then when you view the device, you'll see a high level overview, device having a bad experience because of interference, try this. And that's an ambient agent that's already put in place. You don't interact with it, you don't do anything with it. And those are the kinds of things that you can start getting a lot more complex inside of your processes internally of like, what are things that people do that you could have an ambient agent do? It's a regular workflow, but it's able to dynamically choose what tools it's going to use to do things. So there's I think it's simple. You start simple with that Chat GPT or that Claude or whatever it is you want to use as that interface. And then you can get more and more complex internally, start getting those agents doing those workflows and those kind of repetitive things that people might be doing to free up time for those folks to do more of the things that they should be doing for their jobs, and less maintenance and more, actively resolving issues or building out networks, that kind of thing. Did that answer your question? I kind of went roundabout, but
Yeah.
I think I got there in the end.
No, you touched on a good subject too around AI related jobs. The Q1 Gartner had a statistic out, 35,000 plus AI related job postings just in the US. So you're right. The hiring is going that direction. Things are going AI. As an aside, median salary 157K
Hmm.
for an AI related job. But maybe some of that is skewed. I think Meta just signed a $100 million plus contract with it
Yeah,
with the VP of AI. So
yeah.
maybe that number's a little skewed.
I
It's
saw Meta doing that as try a way to like headhunt folks from
Right.
organizations. They're offering ridiculously gigantic salaries, but those are for like the AI researchers, the people who are developing the AI. The positions that I think are very interesting are the more those digital transformation ones, because we're moving into a space where organizations are realizing that they do need to do this. We're finally. Didn't you had something about the trough of disillusionment, something like that?
Yeah.
Did you want to show
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Let me bring that up and talk to that for a sec. It's a good
Okay.
idea. So there's a new hype cycle out, which I'll share here. Share. And what's interesting about this is it's got Gen AI as starting to move forward. So for those of you who are not familiar with the hype cycle from Gartner, it starts with an innovation trigger. Depending on the position that you're in, that AI that innovation trigger could have been a lot of different things. But during that innovation period, as you approach that first peak, is really where the hype starts. Like, oh my gosh, AI is going to be the end all be all for everything. It's going to wash my dishes. It's going to find the right movies for me on Netflix. It's going to solve all my problems in IT. So as you reach that peak of inflated expectations, they call it, which is a fun name for it, you start to understand what the reality of AI can be, which Gartner terms that trough of disillusionment. And it's on the path to maturity. So all these are common terms known for all kinds of different technologies. 20 years ago, CRM was on this. CRM really a thing, and certainly we've come a long way from there. So certainly on its way to maturity. Gartner looks at maturity more like 2029, according to their latest research. So things are certainly looking up for AI, and now with agentic AI and the outbreak of AI ops, all
Mhm.
have their own kind of hype cycles that we're monitoring.
That
So
actually, I was
yeah.
going to say that, this trough of disillusionment, I think a great example of that, with this agentic AI and all that is, Google search. Right at the top, you've got that Google search that comes out with kind of an abbreviation of whatever the topic you're looking for. And it can be thoroughly incorrect. It has been, they've been refining it over time, but still, it can be thoroughly incorrect. And so I think that's where there's this trough of disillusionment coming in, especially when it's obvious, like that Google search. You see that it's giving these bad answers or incorrect answers, and people are like, "Oh, it's not that good." But generative AI is very good in very targeted applications. And that's, I guess, something that I should have answered to you as well. And how do you roll this out? It's very good in targeted applications. You want to make sure that an AI agent is doing a very specific job. So for us, we've got those AI agents that are doing a roaming analysis or an interference analysis or, congestion. That's a very targeted use for an agent. Whereas if you would try and do one agent for the comprehensive, entirety of a device and why is it having a bad experience, that's when you'd run into potential issues of it losing context or losing a thread or not understanding, that this piece was actually caused by that piece. It's too much for one agent to handle. And that's where that ambient agents, kind of agent swarms idea comes into play. And that's, I think, where the maturity is going to end up of very targeted use cases of it and not general use.
Yeah, you're right. And all that goes with the measure of one thing, ROI.
Mm,
So, what's that mean time to resolution, mean time to innocence? And most of us are using AI to get there at this point. So, very measurable.
yep. And the other thing with AI, I called this the truth layer earlier. When AI is, they're talking about agentic networks, where AI is doing some management of network settings, like RRM, for example, for Cisco, doing some transmit power changes, reductions, increases, channel changes, that kind of stuff. When you have an AI agent that starts doing those things, it is going to be ignorant of the end user's perspective of how things are going. And it might not make the right decisions for the network to manage it properly without that end data. And I actually have a very interesting video that my coworker sent me that I want to pull up because,
And while you're looking for that, the other thing on the maturity curve is everyone's going to have a different maturity curve, but the larger organizations need to start sooner on using the AI because if they don't get the basic structure in place, you can't just buy an AI solution and drop it on top and it suddenly works. So, what do you got here, Doug?
so this is a signal strength chart and this chart is from the perspective of an access point seeing a client. So this is an access point seeing a client, and you can see that the signal strength for the client is actually really poor. It's, minus 70, minus 80. It's really, really not fantastic. But then he pauses here. He pulls up a different piece, the shortcuts, and it's switching the perspective. So what it's doing then is it's going to be from the device's perspective, seeing the access point, the signal strength of the access point from the client's perspective. And you can see from the client's perspective, everything's good to go. So you can see so the AP seeing the client was minus 70, minus 80. So here the AP might think, oh, that client is having a really bad experience. It should be roaming away, but it's not roaming away. I'm going to say there's probably a really big problem here from the AP's perspective. But from the client's perspective, you can see it's happy. It's at minus 65, minus 60. Everything's good for its connection. And so this is where we talk about that truth layer. If you've got any sort of AI that's doing analysis on the data captured from APs, talking about clients, this AP might say, oh, this client's having a really bad time. This client's having roaming issues because it's not roaming way to a stronger signal. But from the client's perspective, everything's good. And good data is kind of the key behind AI making great decisions. And if it just had this portion of the information, it might make a bad decision as to, let me, raise the transmit power or whatever it might do to resolve this issue. Or it might tell you, you might need more access points or anything like that. Whereas the client's perspective, everything's good. So having the client's perspective is really key in all of this agentic piece. AI is only as good as smart as it's good as its data. You need good data, so you need that client perspective.
Right. And I think, there's a big thing, not I think, Gartner thinks as well. In enterprise AI, there's a big trust issue there too. So without that truth layer that you're referring to, you're looking at infrastructure data from the inside out, which is a big, obviously, platform for Seven Signal. So
Hmm.
having that third party data that's connecting, yes, maybe verifying, um, providing a separate view to your point. But without it, you're really you're looking at something with maybe one eye covered versus having both eyes and full visibility. So, trust is huge moving forward with success of AI.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and a lot of these AI workflows, agentic workflows, will always, at least they're going to start for the next few years as human in the loop, which means that AI will get to a point where it wants to make a decision, let's say make an active change in the network, and it'll stop and it'll notify whomever saying like, I want to make this change because of X, Y, and Z, and then the person who's managing that agent will be like, yeah, go for it, or be like, no, let's try something else. Um, but it's always going to be human in the loop. There's always going to be pauses to make sure that AI doesn't go off the rails and start increasing transmit power to the maximum on every AP throughout your entire network. Um, at least initially, we'll see what it looks like 5, 10 years from now, where people have enough trust they just go, yeah, it's fine. So I'm very curious as to where that will go. But again, that that data from everything inside of your network, switches, routers, APs, clients, our sensors, all of that information will be crucial to be able to get to that point of where it can make those really good decisions, those right decisions. So that's that piece. I spoke about model context protocol. I spoke about internally. I've got these ambient agents that we'll be using, doing those passive analyses. That's high level insights. And then when you want a deeper insight, we'll have a more heavyweight, hard hitting agent that you can, get on demand of, hey, these high level insights aren't helping me resolve this issue. Let me get deeper into the insights, looking at all of the information. Let me, understand why there's an issue. And all of that will be supported by traditional machine learning, trend analysis, pattern recognition, helping you see the problems throughout your network, especially if you have a massive network, you're gonna need that kind of thing so you can start elevating those problems. Because there's no way that a handful of people can manage maybe 9,000 access points, that kind of thing. So at least not efficiently.
Yeah, I think you said it best earlier, Doug, that the fact that we're acquiring the data at the client device level and also at the sensor level, we get the best of both worlds on where the data is coming from, off the network or actually off the device itself. And then the inferred, I'm actually pretty excited about the inferred area because it gets it gets the devices that fall in between or the environments that have devices that vary quite often. It solves that problem as well.
Yeah, in particular, that was the inferred, that kind of came from the idea of iOS. We can't get an agent on iOS devices. So we want to use the sensors to look at it from the outside. But there's applications even for when we have devices with an agent on them. So you've got the agent, you're getting the information that's coming from the device, but then you've got a sensor that's seeing what is happening from the device to the access point. So there's even more reinforcing there with all of that information as really ties in the agents and the sensors together into a single platform. And then we get our AI layered on top of that to give you all of those insights. And then the integration piece of MCP into all these other agentic workflows. So now we've got this information, we've got this cohesive information between the data gathering aspects. We've got the AI that we're doing, analysis that we're doing, and then you can get that wherever you need it to be using MCP. So that's our really big workflow. We get that data and we want to get that data out to you wherever you might want to see it.
Yeah.
So, Don, did you have any more of those insights, the statistics around like the hiring for those AI folks? And you mentioned that you have
Yeah.
partner information. I'd love to take a look at some of that stuff.
Yeah, let's do that. Um, so what I did was I thought it was interesting that so I know you're looking at my preview view. So I wanted to put everything on one slide from spending and a hiring vein so you can kind of compare everything. So this is Gartner data. So global IT spend up significantly. certainly from 3 years ago, even from a year-over-year perspective, almost 8%. 8%. Once you get in the T numbers, it's hard to significantly grow, and even the single-digit percent numbers are still monster. So $5 trillion plus dollars in global IT spend just around AI. um, Data centers growth, this is just monster growth. For those of you who are NVIDIA investors and AWS, and you're looking at that growth, 42% year-over-year growth, driven primarily by automation and Gen AI investments. So, big movement there on the investor side. And then, I mentioned the big growth numbers on the job postings. That's just from Q1 of 2025. Year over year, that's a jump of 25%. I mentioned the median salary. Again, I think it's a little skewed by the $100 million plus contract, at least one that's out there. I know there are others as well that are approaching those numbers. There's kind of it's interesting as you get down in this rabbit hole for AI positions, and you look at the educational institutions rolling out PhD programs, and interestingly, there's some data around the first programs that came out, and I put together some questions around that for the audience to see to test our knowledge out a little bit and see where folks are with their knowledge around uh, higher ed and where we are with AI. So let me throw one of those up here and see what our audience thinks. So I mentioned the PhD program. So this is my first question for everybody. Which university was the first to offer an AI PhD program? And believe it or not, that was just in 2018. So some of you might be like, well, 2018, yeah, that's actually a long time ago if you think about, AI. But, others, maybe right around the corner there. So your options are Stanford, MIT, Carnegie Mellon, and Caltech. And give it another second or two here to collect. And I'll end it. I'll share. MIT was the first choice, and that is incorrect. Um, Carnegie Mellon was actually the first university to launch a PhD program, which was surprising. I put Stanford and MIT in there on purpose to fool some folks, and it worked. So the next piece is here. I'll give you an easier one. You get a 50-50 chance of getting this one right. True or false? In the 1960s, several universities worldwide, including Stanford, Edinburgh, that's in the UK, and Tokyo University, began offering AI courses and incorporating AI into the broader computer science degrees. True or false? 50-50 chance. Let's see. And I'll end it. And for those of you who said true, you are indeed correct. So 70% of our audience, just over, got that one right.
I think
So,
it's important to note that this is like beginning of AI. It's
oh
not
yeah,
nearly the maturity that we have today.
I just started using ChatGPT about a year ago. I don't know what it was like way before that, but
Yeah,
I assume
well,
that
yeah,
folks out there, this isn't new to, right?
generative AI is, I think, most people's experience with
Right.
AI. So that's kind of why it's dominating everything. But it's also, it's able to make its own decisions. You could see that Claude had its own tools that it could do things with. I never told it. I just asked it to do something. I never told it how to use those tools, and that's the benefit of generative AI.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is still powerful technology because the search engines and a lot of the interfaces that are have been around for a while have become polluted with advertisements. Now we're not there yet with AI, but I would say that this is going to be mainstream. And you mentioned the ROI earlier, Don, and I think it's some of it's going to be direct and some of it's going to be indirect, but it's really going to be taking the edge off of getting things done quicker. the mean time to resolution or mean time to innocence. There's an expectation that we know what's going on in 3 minutes or less, and we have to be able to help with that situation. And I think our data, as Doug, you said, is what gets us there. It gets us out, just gets it out in front very, very quick. So
Yeah.
I agree with all of this as well. That it's I think the 29 thing, that's Gartner's opinion, like the dude says that might be your opinion, man, but I think it's a lot sooner. I think it's a lot sooner. I
It's
really.
probably a lot sooner. I would say by 2029, we're going to see what's after. So generative AI is built on what's called transformers. I think by the time we hit 2029 and be like, and maybe shortly thereafter, we're going to see what kind of replaces transformers because it's moving so quickly. It's absurd. If you monitor the space, it's just about every week there's a new model out there, a new version of a model that blows all the tests out of the water, and it's better at coding by like 3%. And so it's just, I mean, it is moving so quickly that it is 2029 feels like it's 3 decades away in this environment right now. So
Mhm. And maybe I'll show one more slide here before we throw it back, and that's on the trust side. I wanted to bring that full circle because that was a big deal through the Gartner research that I did. So, even though 76% of CIOs are piloting AI, there's still a part of this that they don't believe the data.
mm,
Or it's giving false positives. We hear that all the time around certain AI ops platforms, and the it goes back to the source of that data, and you see that last point, that last bullet point, and this isn't me talking. This is Gartner. Explainability, bias reduction, transparency.
mm,
These are what is going to make AI successful in any organization. And for the implementations that have failed out there that relate to AI, looking back, what was the cause of that failure? Maybe not related to enterprise wireless, but the trust thing really is a big deal, and that
mm.
truth layer is important.
Yeah, and
Yeah, absolutely. I think that trust, I kind of mentioned it earlier, right? You've got that Google search results AI right at the top that often is wrong. And I think that's largely where the trust issue comes from is the attempt to do like a broad application of this generative AI, which ends up with these like ridiculous summarizations of, it's incorrect or it's not quite accurate. So I think it is good to go into, general use generative AI like ChatGPT and things like, with a pinch of salt, making sure that what it is saying is true, asking it for sources, making sure those sources exist. Um, but when you get down to, and I said it before, when you get down to generative AI doing a very specific small task, it is very good, and I would say it's very trustworthy. And that's where there needs to be the distinction between what large organizations are trying to do and what the specific targeted use cases are going to be to get you that information that's very useful and accurate.
Mhm.
yeah, and so in the end, you combine those two things between Doug, what you're saying, data, and Don is saying is trust, and it's this data-driven trust is really what it is. It's data-driven trust, and our data is coming from the devices, coming from the sensors, and then we do some analysis. You can choose or not choose, Doug, to use our analysis if you so choose, or
Yep.
you use the data directly, or you take our analysis. We can do both. Your choice.
Yep. Yeah, our entire experience score, like that roll up, that's based on, algorithms and weighted averages and all these things from the data and set SLAs. So all of that is driven off of just the engine that we're building. And then on top of it is the AI doing the analysis of it. So even if you don't use our AI portion, even if you pull in just that experience score data, that's still really good data and accurate, and it's not that generative AI, maybe I can't trust it is 100%, trustworthy that that data is accurate and coming from those devices or those sources.
Mhm. No, Ted mentioned the 20 2030 or 2029 reference uh, on my Gartner slide there, and I actually had a poll queued up on that. I'll throw that up here too. So, based on what you're hearing or, what you think about AI, where do you think it's going to be in 2029 or 2030, whether you're a Gartner researcher or not? Oh, sorry, wrong one. AI maturity. Crud. I gotta save that poll. I'll get back to that. Sorry. Give me one sec. It's probably quick. Save the poll to webinar. I've been creating polls in the background as we think of new kind of cool ways to go about this. Um, let's see.
I like what's AI again as an answer. I feel like that's
You
the
like?
kind of question you would get from Apple Intelligence, because I've heard that's not very intelligent.
Oh, I got to end the other one. That's why I was like, why isn't it letting me launch? Here we go. Okay. Can you see
Sweet.
that one? By 2023, excuse me, 2030, AI will take over most IT troubleshooting, replace half of today's dashboards, predict and prevent outages, or will still be figuring out how to explain itself. Give it another second or two. We're still bouncing all over.
I feel like this needs to be multiple
Some
choice.
Yeah, some people change their answers along the way. So that's okay. So 56% take over most IT troubleshooting, and then another 44% predict and prevent outages. So at least this group thinks that it'll have itself figured out and be certainly more defined. We're
You know, it's,
definitely going in that direction.
it's funny you put that predict and prevent, because one of the things that we are aiming for toward the end of next year for AI is being able to do some predictive analysis. From the perspective of the agents and sensors, if we can see that, certain data points are trending toward a problem, we alert you and let you know ahead of time that things might be going toward a problem. So it's not an incident, it's a potential problem that you can start taking actions on. So those are the things that we're aiming toward the end of next year, and then going into 2020, what's after? Yeah, 2027. Continuing on doing more machine learning in the background for sure.
All right. Do you want me to pull up our takeaways from today and maybe pull some questions up from the audience
Yeah, let's do
if
that.
they're not feeling shy today? So there's a lot of takeaways from what we talked about today. So the truth layer was a big piece of that and what Doug was talking about. Um, Certainly one of the more seven signal based takeaways, right? We want you to understand the value in our data, that independent view of the network, the outside in view, whether that's from our sensor technology or our agent technology. And then overall, the shift from experimenting with AI and more enterprise grade execution. Really, the shift now, Gartner sees it. We're seeing it as people are asking us to build different things into our AI and what their expectations are. Um, so a lot of different things happening there. The trust issue and focusing on AI infrastructure and the data around it is really big as well. And then outlining the ROI, and that's something that we work with our customers on all the time through Art Facone's team and our services, and what type of value is Seven Signal bringing, and extending past that, what type of value is AI bringing to our organizations, whether that's a chat GPT or something that marketing is using on the automation side, or something IT is using on the ITSM automation side, or AI ops. The list goes on and on. But there are several takeaways, and this should be an ongoing conversation. And I know we're going to hold up our end of that bargain to make sure that we're keeping pace with the industry and all the change in AI.